Hello and welcome back to the All Out Soccer YouTube channel and podcast, of course. And slightly different one this week. It is just me bringing you the latest World Cup news and US men's national team updates. My co-host Jeremy Goldstein cannot make it this week, but hopefully he can return next week for the next episode. But there are still topics to be discussed and the show must go on. So it'll just be me for a little brief update this week, bringing you through all of the latest news. Now we start with a relatively big update and hopefully a decent prospect ahead of the World Cup next year. Now, we already know that there's going to be huge stars such as Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, Kylian Mbappe, slightly biased Harry Kane, I'll chuck him in there, even though I think he's one of the best strikers of all time. For England, of course, will be there. But one player that isn't expected to be there but really wants to is Neymar. Now, of course, Neymar is a legend when it comes to soccer. He started his career off with Santos, rose to fame there, then joined Barcelona and formed an iconic front three alongside Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez. Then kind of stepped out of their shadow and went to Paris Saint-Germain, attempting to become, the number one player there and attempt to bring them over the line and win that Champions League that eluded them for so long. Of course, they've since done that. He wasn't on the roster at the time. His career has unfortunately stalled. He's still only 33. In 2023, he moved to Saudi Arabia and joined Al Hilal. A very underwhelming spell there. He only made 3 competitive appearances for the side before returning to Santos. Santos was in a bad situation. They were at risk of being relegated. Neymar was there. Thankfully for them and for him, he helped them stay up. Really found form towards the end of the year. They won 4 of their last 6 games. He scored 5 goals in that time, and they avoided a humiliating relegation, really. And his loyalty showed even more that he was playing through a meniscus injury. He was playing through pain. I believe he was getting injections to make sure he'd be out on the field and could do his best to keep them afloat. And now that he's had a strong end to the campaign, which is something that Brazil national team manager Carlo Ancelotti said was necessary if he was even to be involved in the picture for the World Cup next year. He really wants to go. And he's even made kind of a comedic promise to Ancelotti. So he's undergone surgery for this meniscus problem now. He's going to be out for a little bit now, potentially until February to recover. But that puts him on track to, get to form, get to fitness ahead of the World Cup if he is considered. But he's told Ancelotti that he wants to do everything possible to bring the World Cup back to Brazil. Of course, Brazil, 5-time champions, haven't won it since 2002. They used to have these golden squads. Ronaldo, R9, Ronaldinho, Rivaldo, Cafu, Roberto Carlos, Lucio. The names are endless. And Neymar was the main guy for this latest generation. Of course, that's kind of ended now. You're looking at more like Vinicius Jr. and Richarlison up top for them. Richarlison, obviously, controversial whether he should be leading the line for them, but he still seems to find goals for Tottenham at the moment back in the Premier League. But Neymar wants to be there. And he is definitely putting out a major statement in doing so. Not only does he want to bring the World Cup back to Brazil, he's promised if he's picked by Ancelotti, he will score in the final. Massive claim. He's going through surgery right now. Won't be back till February, so it's giving him some time to get back to full match fitness before World Cup selection even happens. But just with all the stars at the World Cup, and as much as he hasn't been the player he once was, I feel like this would be a really exciting time for Brazil for the World Cup next year if Neymar is there. This guy has dominated the tournament in the past. I remember really sadly for him, I think it was back in 2014 when it was held in Brazil. He was the star of the show. He was driving Brazil, hopefully for them to that home World Cup, was amazing in the group stages, scored a brace in the opening game against Croatia, I believe. And it was looking good in the knockout rounds until Brazil faced Colombia, and he got a really nasty vertebrae injury, put him out for several months. Brazil ended up having a humiliating loss in the next round to Germany. They lost 7-1. One of the all-time classics and all-time games that Brazil fans will never want to see again. In 2018, against Croatia, and also 2022, he cried for days, apparently. That's what he said. Once Brazil went out, he cried for days. That is his main goal. He's achieved success at club level, of course, winning the Champions League and the Liga on numerous occasions with Barcelona. But the one thing he wants is that World Cup trophy, that World Cup honour. And he is desperate to be there and desperate to play a part. But Ancelotti has never picked him. He last played for Brazil in 2023 and he suffered an ACL tear during that game. He is an injury-prone player. That is the problem. But Ancelotti is yet to pick him since becoming head coach. He's open to the idea, and Neymar is going to do everything he can. And I just think that is incredibly exciting should he be there. Just as a reminder as well, following the World Cup draw, they got drawn into Group C alongside Morocco, Haiti, and Scotland. So a pretty achievable group. Morocco are favourites to win the Africa Cup of Nations, which is currently ongoing, and a very, very good side. Of course, they reached the semi-final of the World Cup in 2022 when it was held in Qatar, which was very impressive for them and a massive statement for African soccer in general. But Neymar wants to be there, and it's certainly one to watch. Now, off the field for the World Cup, there is a bit of controversy. I don't know if you can see the colour behind me. It is a blizzard right now. I am in Canada. I am near Toronto for the holidays. And Canadian cities that are involved with the World Cup are getting quite a bit of backlash at the moment, starting in Vancouver. Now, ahead of the World Cup, they have installed roughly 200 closed-circuit surveillance cameras in and around places that they're going to be holding World Cup events, and obviously the locations itself. And it's all done ahead of the World Cup to prioritise safety, is what is being said. So these closed-circuit cameras have incredible technology. They can scan faces, they can pick up audio files, and that data will be shared with FIFA. Now, as much as it is to prioritise safety, it hasn't gone down too well with the citizens in and around Vancouver. Obviously, the World Cup is in 6 months' time. The agreement is part of the city of Vancouver's bid, and they've got the agreement with FIFA themselves. These cameras will all be removed after the World Cup takes place, and they are in a trial period as we speak. However, the citizens have been told that all faces during the trial period will be blurred. It is just to make sure that everything is up and running and working smoothly as the World Cup takes place. I mean, the world is a crazy place right now, and of course, everything is unknown. Things happen, unfortunately. It's not always sunshine and rainbows, and FIFA wants to make sure that safety is prioritised. But there are concerns with the citizens about where this data is being shared, and non-soccer fans are wondering why FIFA is having this type of control and dictatorship over, their general practice and their general public areas. These cameras will also be installed in Toronto ahead of the World Cup. So it's not just Vancouver, it's going to be in multiple cities. But it's definitely one to watch. I mean, the technology they have is insane nowadays. And, if it's to potentially restrict bad events happening, then I'm all for it. But yeah, just speaking to people around here about it as well. As soon as I saw the report a few days ago, I had to go out and ask the public. And as much as people are happy that they're going to be, hopefully in safe hands and potential threats will be limited if that arises, we hope not. People are slightly concerned for their privacy, as we are nowadays. But yeah, they've been installed and they're currently in the test period, and it remains to be seen how advanced they are come the World Cup. We're going to head to a break now, and I'll catch you in part 2 to go through some US men's national team gossip. Welcome back to part 2. We're going to be discussing the US men's national team, specifically 2 midfielders, Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams. Now, of course, it's been a great time for the US in recent times. At the start of the year, there were concerns over Pochettino and the team's form in general. That seems to have turned towards the end of the year. He seems to have a good thing going with the group of players that he has. And it's incredibly exciting. They also did very well in the World Cup draw, drawing the likes of Panama and Australia and Paraguay, I believe it was, and also a team that is yet to be determined, but it could be Turkey if they make it through the World Cup playoff next year. But there is a concern surrounding the midfield position as of now. Tyler Adams, who I've sung his praises in this podcast on several occasions, I think he's one of the best midfielders, not only for the US, I think he is the best midfielder for the US. I don't think there's any sort of argument about that. I do think he's one of the most underrated midfielders in the Premier League, especially for that holding role. I just think he's a unique player that is not only good at sitting back and kind of breaking up play and doing the dirty work, he's also just constantly looking to play the ball forward, get out of the danger zone, and then ignite that attack with the talented players that Bournemouth have at their disposal. But he suffered a torn MCL injury that's going to put him out for 2 to 3 months. So not only does this put him at risk of missing those marquee friendlies next year against Belgium and also Portugal, as much as he should be back in time for the World Cup and under selection, it does raise concerns over his fitness in general. Now, Tyler Adams is, he comes from the New York Red Bulls. He's played at Leeds United. He's gone to Bournemouth and really established himself as a top Premier League professional. But his injury record does speak for itself. He's missed a lot of playing time. Even since Pochettino's been in charge for the United States, he's managed 22 games. Tyler Adams has only been available for 10 of those through several injury problems. This is the most significant he's had in a couple of years. He's missed a whole season before with muscular injuries. So as much as he should be back for the World Cup, there is a lot of concern over his fitness in general. He needs to be there. It's a big statement to make. I do believe if Tyler Adams is not fit for the World Cup, the US is going to struggle a lot more than it would if he was around. It's just such a pivotal position in that team. He's such a leader as well. This speaks volumes as well. Bournemouth manager Andoni Iraola, who has gained a lot of respect. He's even been linked with future Chelsea jobs and Manchester City, etc. Even Arsenal, when Mikel Arteta was facing a bit of hate before they started to dominate the league this season. He says Tyler is very valuable for us. I think he's also an extremely unique player and very specific in what he does. He is everything that we ask and everything that we need him to do. And without him, we are definitely a worse team. So massive, massive praise from Iraola there. And it's justified. And it's a massive concern that he's injured again. Hopefully he can get back to full fitness. It's looking at around March time that he should be back, potentially February, if his recovery process is quicker than expected. So him for those friendly games against Belgium and Portugal is not looking likely. But hopefully between March and the World Cup in June, he can stay fit. Now, the other midfielder that we must talk about is Weston McKennie. Jeremy and I have discussed him at length and what he should do with his career. He was initially left out of the Juventus starting team. He's kind of been in and out since he moved to Juventus in 2021. Now, he started his career off with Schalke, and he then joined Juventus, as I said, in 2021. He was initially a strong, key member of the side, very, very well liked over there. He's played an array of positions. He's played in central midfield. He's even played out wide. He's played as a wing back, filled in other places in the defensive line too. He's then had a period where he was left out. He was loaned to Leeds United. At one point, they had Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie over at Leeds United in the Premier League. That spell wasn't too successful, but he also showed that he could play at that level and had the required physicality to perform in England, which is obviously something in terms of international soccer that is required too, based on so many cultures and different approaches to the game. He's just played his 200th game for Juventus. He is now back in favour under Luciano Spalletti. Looking good for him. But his contract is up at the end of this season. Now, we discussed whether he should move in January, first of all, when his playing time is limited. Because unless he's playing, he's not going to go to the World Cup, and he's a player that the US need if he's on form. When he's not, there is a question over his validity and legitimacy in that midfield. But he's just played his 200th game, and they're already asking him about his future. McKennie wants to stay in Turin. McKennie does not want to leave. He clearly loves it there. And he's recently said that it is all in his agent's hands. He's had 200 appearances. It was a huge moment for me, my family, and for the people of America. I'm extremely blessed to have reached this milestone. And it's very difficult to be a Juventus player for this amount of time and make 200 appearances, but I did it. Hopefully, there will be another 100, he said. I hope to stay at Juventus, but it is all up to my agent. So it remains to be seen what the future for McKennie looks like. As I said, very talented player. He's 27 now. So he's reaching the prime of his career, especially in that position. But, he's not been the biggest factor in all of Pochettino's squads. I mean, alongside Adams, he's rotated the likes of Berhalter, and he's even played Roldan at times. McKennie's kind of struggled to fit in, but he is starting to hit form. He is starting to be a consistent member of that side. He also assisted a goal in a 2-1 win over Roma to celebrate his 200th appearance, which was well celebrated. He's clearly a popular player in the locker room. Took a photo with the whole roster in the locker room after the game, holding up a 200 shirt, and they had a little celebration there, which was nice to see. So he clearly loves it there. He's clearly well respected and wants to stay. It remains to be seen whether Juventus will extend that deal. And what their priorities are. Juventus famously has a large overhaul every now and then. Seems to be every 3 or 4 years they kind of bring in a whole influx of new talent and then flush old players out. But it'd be nice if McKennie can nail down that role ahead of the World Cup, especially if Tyler Adams is restricted by another injury or he has a setback in his recovery process. McKennie could be a key player. And like I said, he's versatile. He's played at a wing back similar to Timothy Weah, got confused with his father there. He's also played out wide in a more offensive role. He's versatile. Maybe he isn't nailed on to start for Pochettino. He's quite enjoying the system he's playing at the moment, and there seems to be little room for experimentation, although I'm sure we'll see a lot more of that against Belgium and Portugal next year. But if Tyler Adams is out, he definitely needs to be there. And even if he isn't out, I think McKennie can be such a big option off the bench. He seems happy to contribute no matter what. He's done that for Juventus. He's shown his loyalty over 4 or 5 years since he joined there. He's gone through moments where he's surplus to requirements, and then suddenly he's a key player again. He's used to the peaks and troughs. He's used to the ups and downs, and he's clearly a loyal player and one that the US needs. That is all for today's All Out Soccer podcast. Sorry it was a brief one. We should be back in full flow next week. As I said earlier in the podcast, no matter what you're celebrating and what you're doing during this festive period, I hope everyone has a happy holidays and a happy new year, and I will catch you next week.